Okay, guys, would you like to introduce yourself to one another? You've not necessarily met one another before, and ultimately for the people watching this on Wednesday night, feels like a bit like being sort of Graham Norton here, kidding on it's Wednesday night when it's Tuesday morning. But anyway, I didn't always want to be Graham Norton, but there you go. Sounds interesting. So, would someone like to kick off? Introduce
you want me to, Jack?
Good man.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Rob Saunders. You might have bumped into me at a few of Jack's events. I'm a 52-year-old creative director, run a design agency in North Wales. So we're all Celtic on this little Zoom cast. A little bit about myself in terms of my MindStore journey. I found MindStore by, I don't know, intuition, by whatever. I was working a stressful job. I was actually selling advertising space. And then it got so much, I sort of got into sort of a bit of depression and whatever. Then for some known reason, I was in an office world of all things. And then something fell off the shelf. This fell off the shelf.
Yeah.
Whether it be, and this is the original copy because you can see how torn it is and notes and things. That's how I got into it. And I'd sort of really digested everything that Jack was doing, bought the tapes at the time to put in the car, and then I meditated at home. And then eventually, a few years later, I was invited to a MindStore for Business seminar at the Barbican in London. I think it was a 2-day event. Yeah. By somebody, and I started getting into it properly. Quite a few years on, I'd forgotten everything, and then I got into the on my 50th birthday, in 2018. My wife bought me tickets to the Giants program in Dublin, and from there, after everybody's introduced themselves, I'll let you know about my low carb journey.
Yeah, good man. Thanks, Rob. That's cool. Patrick, do you want to introduce yourself? Well, people know you now. You're the big star.
Okay, thanks, Jack, and thanks for being here the second day. Patrick O'Connor is my name. So I'm 59. I've lived in Cork on and off for most of my life. I suppose the introduction to my MindStore journey. From a very early age, I was always a voracious reader. And I suppose my first exposure to goal setting and all that was a book that I came across called The Lazy Man's Way to Riches, by a guy called Joe Carbo. You've probably seen that one, Jack. What a fantastic title for a book as well. But as a 17-year-old kid and all that, I learned about visualization and thought control and goal setting and all that. And it kind of forged the way forward and all that. But I suppose after a 4-year stint in London in my late 20s, I returned to Ireland and I set up my own company. And initially that was promoting wireless alarm systems, but later expanding to telemedicine, RFID in healthcare. And now we've our own software and systems, maybe in more than 40 hospitals in Ireland. Wow. And we've had inquiries from abroad, like South Africa and the Middle East. My first MindStore course was in Galway, probably 95 or 96. Wow. And I remember at the time there was 5 of us in the company, so I took the whole team. And I thought it was amazing. For the first time I'd seen somebody bringing the whole lot together and explaining it in a fun way and a practical way. The only thing I'd say is there was loads of fruit on the table that day, Jack.
Not now.
That was the wisdom of the day. I suppose after that we became MindStore regulars and we'd have done a load more of the programs. I was at the advanced program in Glasgow in 99. And like I said, I showed it last week, still have the paperweight from it. Okay. And I went to the first island in Glasgow in 2005, which was a profound thing for me because I had a health challenge at the time and I got some great wisdom as I explained last week.
Yeah.
After this, I think I met you in Dublin a few times, and at that stage, we got talking, and I invited you to come and do an in-house event for us to launch. It was a new product that we were launching. It was a wireless alarm system. And I think we had a 2-day event in Killarney in 2007. And there was over 80 people, including staff and customers. And it was just an amazing, amazing experience. And I think from that I signed up to do the Line in the Sand in Stuttgart. And to me, that was, and I've done lots of courses with lots of people down through the years. And this was the most profound experience that I had, especially the Day of Silence. And I think that it's for another day and all that, but the amount of coincidences and the amount of stuff that went on there, it was just scary, and it was just an amazing, amazing experience. And I think at some stage you should think about, not telling your business or anything, you should think about doing something like that again. It was just amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
So I think I'll come to my low carb journey soon.
Fantastic, Patrick. Thank you. Okay, Joanna, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I'm Joanne Mcleod. I've been a member of MindStore for about 20 odd years. Came to MindStore, I think probably did a lot of positive thinking type stuff on my own quite naturally. Came across Lou Tice's stuff on investment and excellence.
Excellent, yeah.
And whilst that was great from understanding a psychology point of view, the techniques weren't as sharp. And then when I came across MindStore, there was, for me, no looking back. I work in leadership development, coaching, innovation, creativity, all of those types of spaces. And it, for me, I'm able to use the tools for myself, and then able to use it quite a lot in my job as well. So really grateful for all of the experiences that I've had, that I can help pass them on to other people.
Cheers, Joanne. Thank you. Sasha?
Well, my name's Sasha Jason, and I'm 51, and I work in Edinburgh College as a lecturer for young people and people who've been out of education and they've all got additional support needs. That's been a job that I've only got into recently, which I'll explain a bit more later why. MindStore journey, my mum had given me a book when she'd been on, I think it was MindStore for Business, way back in the 90s.
Wow.
So I'd read your book, and then I went on to the 2-day course in Glasgow, and I think it was around 98. And in the 90s, really from when I'd been sort of 15, 16, I'd had a fatigue issue. And this was all part of a journey to really try and work out what was going on with this. So I was reading lots of sort of self-help books on positivity, and I was a really positive person. But around that period, I'd been diagnosed with depression, which I sort of bought into, went to the course and came out thinking, no, I'm a positive person. All this really resonates with me. It's almost how I think, but it was putting it into some sort of structure, I think. Yeah. So that really, from then on, gave me the tools to cope, I think, to survive in the life that I was having with this fatigue, which I'll go on and speak a bit more about later. But I think the main thing for me about MindStore has been, it's been my coping mechanism throughout. It's been my mindset. It's been what's got me through. Since then, I've done the island twice. I took my son along, who was 14 at the time, to do the island, and I'd had a chat with you about that then. I've done Whispers, and the most recent one, the Evolution Programme, which every time I do a course, it just sort of reinforces and gets me back on track. And the programming I've always done, and the sort of looking at things not as coincidences, I've always used, and I just see that as getting me through my journey to where I've got to now, and I'm still sort of using it for that. That's really me, and I'll tell you a bit more about the fatigue and the low carb lifestyle later on.
Fantastic. I've always gifted around animal totems, but that animal totem behind you right now, Sacha, is really impressive.
Can I tell you a tiny
very
story?
much you.
Very quick story.
Yeah.
I was on a yoga retreat in Ibiza last year, and it was a shamanic yoga retreat, and it was fantastic. And it turns out, when I was doing my journeying, that the lion is my sort of power animal, and the lizard as well, which I wear a lot, is another one. And actually, during one of the yoga sessions, when we were doing Shavasana, I actually had a real lizard, come on to me and sit for about 15 minutes right here where this is.
Wow.
It was phenomenal. So yeah, I'm into my animals.
Good for you. Excellent. Yeah, the animals show up pretty powerfully in the island, of course, and then
Massively.
those who did the advanced stuff, we meet the animal out in the landscape. But anyway, that's for another time. Maybe I will do something, Patrick, but who knows? Guys, the reason why I started this, as we all know, is to give people encouragement with the COVID thing. And inevitably, I suppose, people who are looking at the coincidental stuff that's come around is a lot of people are turning to a low-carb lifestyle, arguably for health reasons or whatever. But I don't know your journey into it. Would you mind each of you sharing how you've got into this, how you fell into it, and then why you've got into it? And then I'll sort of share my little bit about it after. So Rob, do you want to just go back to that and just tell us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I won't go on too long, but I know we've got time issues and stuff like that. But my wake up moment was back in 2018 when a family member who's actually from Ireland, who was my age, suddenly died, and it was cardiovascular, and I knew that my fitness, my health, my weight had been compromised for years. But I was ignoring the warning signs, the nagging comments from my lovely wife, Sian, and the continual increase on the scales. I've been happy being Big Rob for years, or so I thought. So I had an incentive for change. So I embarked on a positive road to fitness. Little did I realise that it would affect my happiness as well, and a thirst for knowledge, really. So I mentioned that I got the Giants program for my 50th birthday from Sian, and my birthday was in December. My family member passed away in the end of the January in 2018. And then I got thought. Then my son said, "Dad," this was sort of him being helpful, "do you fancy being a gym buddy?" So I did. And then that's when I sort of got on the scales, realised that something had to change. Forward that another month, and I was on the Giants program with you as my birthday present. And at the lunchtime in Dublin, you kindly took me to one side, Jack, and said, "Rob, I'm a bit concerned about you. You're carrying a lot around your tummy, around your belly area, and I'm really concerned. Do you want to just spend 10 minutes and just have a chat?" And you basically opened up your wealth of knowledge and say, "Have you tried this? Try this, try this." And this was probably at my heaviest. I was sort of 20 stone at that time, at 5'10". And then you introduced me into the low carb, high fat way of eating. I won't call it a diet because it's not a diet, it's a way of life, because of all the other benefits. Losing weight is a byproduct of this. It's all the other things that come with it. Now, I'm not new to dieting. I've got loads of funny stories about my Weight Watchers gin diet, to winning a tin of corned beef at Slimmer's World. I was drawn in, ironically, by a MindStore member to selling shakes and stuff like that, which I sort of got into, but intuitively I got out of it again. So I've always been on a yo-yo diet. And the challenges I had with the yo-yo diet, one, it caused, for a guy like me who's gone big to, not as healthy as I am now, but shrinking and enlarging, you get stretch marks. That's like scarred for life sort of thing. And I call them my battle scars now. And also in the 2000s as well, because of yo-yo dieting, which I've researched for with some of the books that I've read, especially Jimmy and Christine Moore's Real Keto book, is I had to have my gallbladder removed. And it comes to basically the technical reason what I've been told is because my fat ducts have been opening and closing, and the residue is causing little crusty bits in my gallbladder, and that causes the gallstones. Hence, I had to have it whipped out. Worst pain I've had in my life. But with this way of eating, way of lifestyle, I've learned to adapt. But from the gallbladder issues, I've had sore knees, swollen ankles, that you sort of take it that you're going to, in midlife, you're going to be aching and creaking when you're putting your socks on in the morning. It's when you don't particularly like your body, it's easy not to listen to it either. That's what I find. And I've ignored all these warning signs. And then that wake-up call, losing John over in Ireland at the same age as me. And my wife and two lovely boys have been openly asking me to, beggingly, to change for years. And so it was at the MindStore conference, the MindStore Giants, the way you blatantly, I wouldn't say blatantly, but you pulled me over, really concerned. And I sort of realized then that listening to my body, and also whatever the trigger point is in anyone's life, it's not a quick fix, it's a life change. And I then, bit like this, read all the books that you advised to do. Wheat Belly by William Davis, Grain Brain by Dr. Perlmutter, Keto Clarity, Jimmy Moore, and then over here, Zoe Harcum, The Big Fat Fix. Yeah. And then you start listening to the podcasts then, which you again advised. Tried two keto dudes, really funny but really informative. They talk to you like a person, not a doctor. Jimmy Moore's Living La Vida Low Carb. And there's lots of others. And then over here, you've got people like Asi Malhotra, who partnered up with, if anybody watched the film the other week, with Donald O'Neill to produce another film, which I do recommend, called The Big Fat Fix. Yeah. And that's with Donald O'Neill and Dr. Asi Malhotra. Born out of that was a thing called the Piopi diet, which is Mediterranean. It's not. It's a way of life, and it also highlights the plights of Tim Noakes, which we've talked about in these discussions, and this little place in the south of Italy called Piopi, where people technically forget to die because of their way of life and the way of eating. Yeah. If you want to watch it, it's on the Diet Doctor website. And there's a free trial for 7 days. Just gorge yourself on that. But to me, low carb, it's a bit like catching a wave. So I was in the right place at the right time. I was on a mission for change. And to me, it had to be something revolutionary. And the low carb way of life was just that. It was like another way of thinking as well. Getting rid of that myth of eating fat, good fat, doesn't make you fat. And everything that I had been told, from doctors to slimming clubs to the media, the government, it just not worked. Just not worked for me. And
we'll pick up on that part later, if you don't mind, Rob.
Yeah.
Just for people listening, you can't teach something like Whispers with Giants and not listen to the whisper.
Yeah, exactly.
When you see in the audience, Rob struggling with his weight and being told by one of your coaches immediately, you need to tell this guy because he's ready to hear what you're going to say to him. I used the 3 fingers, tip of the tongue trigger, approached you, I let them speak through me to get, and obviously it rang the bell. And I'm ever so happy for that, because I was genuinely worried for you. And it wasn't for you to lose weight. I was concerned about your health.
Exactly.
And what I knew at that point. But anyway, thanks, Rob, for sharing all of that. Really, really powerful. So, Patrick, do you want to pick up on your journey in and why you got into it again? Just how you found it.
I do, Jack. Maybe as discussed last week, I was brought up by my grandmother, and my staple diet that time was her homemade healthy brown bread. Yeah. And it was just potatoes. I didn't eat any meat as a young fella. I just didn't like it. And it was just potatoes and veg and all that. And I never had any weight issues and all that. But obviously, as a young guy, there was no smartphones or anything that time. You were out and you were playing outside all the time. But in my late teens and my early 20s, I developed, a liking for alcohol, and I drank far too much of it for my good. Thankfully, I didn't seem to have the alcoholic gene and all that. But and I know now that obviously beer is liquid sugar. But still, even I never actually got very noticeably heavy and all that. Maybe a little bit of the muffin around the jeans and all that. But what I did notice was that I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I started developing what you call stomach problems or digestive issues. And it started off where you'd be sensitive to eating some type of foods. And for a finish, anything that I was eating was triggering me. And I remember, a bit like Rob, I tried various diets and all that. I was a vegetarian for 12 years, did all the green smoothies, the wheatgrass, the juices. And in fact, I only noticed that the problems would get worse. But you get entrenched into this has to be right and all that, because there's so much evidence for it, and you stay with it. Yeah. And I think that at one stage I was diagnosed, I did a gut permeability test, and I was diagnosed with leaky gut, which I now know, and I did some research, and I mean, that's a dreadful thing, and there's so much of us have got it, right? Yeah. But it's probably responsible for a hell of a lot of autoimmune diseases and all that other nasty stuff. But I suppose that it was my carb journey, and like I mentioned earlier, I mean, we kept in touch down through the years and all that, and I was connected to you on Facebook and all that, and I had seen your recommendations. I hadn't seen you face to face probably for the last 3 or 4 years. I think it was an event in Dublin, but I'd seen your posts and all that, and for some reason I just didn't listen to any of the podcasts or saying, well, do you know what, I'm probably doing okay, and maybe this isn't for me now or whatever, right? But for whatever reason about this, it was roughly around this time last year, and you'd been recommending, I think it was August, the first one that I did. And as I said last week, the one that I did listen to was Gary Fetke with Paul Saladino, and it was just a major light bulb moment for me. So and I listened to that one a couple of times, and I looked at, I listened to all the previous podcasts. I found a diet doctor and started looking at this, and it just made so much sense that you said there was a lot of science behind this, and you could see that where the nutrition industry had come from and all that. And at the time, I reached out to you to thank you for, guiding me towards this, and you very kindly agreed to do a call, which we did. And it was at that stage that you brought me on to about Ivor, and I hadn't come across him before that. And again, that was another light bulb moment, because there was this Irish guy, right? And he's so passionate about promoting from a heart disease point of view. And I'd obviously had an issue 15 years previous to that because I had a stent put in, but I felt very healthy, and I'd had an angio, as I talked about last week, in 2017, and everything was 100% clear. It was perfect. But I still thought the CAC scan made so much sense, and I looked at the preview of the movie that we all looked at a couple of weeks ago, and I booked myself in for one, and that was sometime in October, and the results came back. It was very high. I think it was 1,055, but I wasn't overly concerned because it was all almost in one artery, and it had said that because of the stent and all that, that it was probably that. But cut a long story short, my GP was very concerned. He suggested I have an angio, and I did the angio on the 13th of February and discovered that I had a 95% and a 75% stenosis in very dangerous areas. And basically, if that 95 had gone to the 100, it was probably curtains where it was. Yeah. So I can say that indirectly or directly or whatever way over the last 6 or 7 months, because I intuition or whatever caused me to listen to the podcast that you were recommending for a couple of years before that, not intrusively or anything like that, right? And I did the scan, and basically I can honestly say that saved my life, right? Because the results of the angio that day, right, was that I had to have heart surgery. And I fought against it because I did a second consultation with S.E. Malhotra as well, who I obviously had respected an awful lot. And he said, he looked at the scans and all that, and he said, you're better off doing it. Yeah. And now I know that it was probably the best choice I could do, because you have a clean set of pipes and yeah. On the regime and what I know now, I'm very confident that I can keep them that way. Yeah. And I suppose that on the keto itself, or I call it low carb, right? Do you want me to talk about that now, or am I tracking back to it?
We'll pick up later. It's just, but you got into it for health reasons. That was the fundamental reason, and obviously you found out it by obviously you keep pushing it. So that's fantastic. Yeah. So Joanne, do you want to pick up now and tell us your story about how you got into it and why?
Sure. I had a period of about 2 years where I just felt sick constantly. I had a lot of acid reflux. I'd gone to the doctor. They put you on omeprazole or lansoprazole. My mum had it. My nana had it. I watched them take tablets every day, and I just thought, I don't want to take a tablet every day. And I got speaking to a friend at work, and he recommended this book that at the time I thought was quite out there. I mean, I'm going back maybe about 6-7 years ago or so, and you had to do this saliva test to spit into a glass, and if your saliva rose to the top and so on, there was a bit of science behind it. And at the time I kind of thought, oh, that's quite interesting, but I didn't really do anything about it. My diet at that time was probably quite a lot of bread, a lot of pasta, a lot of rice, things that were quick and easy. I had 3 young children. And then as it started to get worse, and I ended up on the highest milligram of the tablet, and it still didn't make any difference. And I came to the Giants, and just before that, I think probably about, I don't know, a month or 2 before coming on the Giants, I had a breast lump, which was one of the scariest things I've ever had to deal with as a mum. You know, you can have face your mortality. Thankfully, it was a whole load of cysts and a really, really large cyst. But when I came on the Giants, someone that day recommended the Wheat Belly book by Dr. William Davis. Yeah. I remember going out for a drink with you afterwards and talking to you about it, and you recommended, read the book, but if you've got symptoms, then, just half an apple will help, and that absolutely does. So if ever I get there, it's probably the only time that I'll ever eat an apple now. And when I read the book, at the time, we were just about to start a house remodel, so we had no kitchen and all of that. With a microwave that I was relying on. And I remember kind of reading the book, and for me it was the acid reflux, but also bloating. So I would start a day where my jeans would be a size too big, and I would finish the day where they would be a size too small. So that would be 2 dress sizes in a day that your stomach was bloating. Yeah. And I can't make myself burp. If a burp's going to come, it'll come. But some people can make themselves burp. I can't do that. So it was constantly just sitting on my chest that I felt as though I was going to vomit the whole time. Wow. And when I get into the book, stopped, wheat and bread and the obvious things like bread and pasta. But it's not until you begin reading that you realise how much it's in everything. So really reading the labels and so on, what it gets pumped into. And the other kind of effects for me, as soon as I gave it up, the bloating went away instantly. The heartburn and the acid reflux stopped instantly.
Yeah.
I had put my migraines down to hormones, and they reduced dramatically.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that people take away from this, if you're a female, or you've got a wife or a daughter or a sister, there was one line in Dr. Davis's book that talked about the need for particularly people in the West to take iodine,
Yeah.
and kelp.
Yeah.
And there was one tiny little line, and it said something about because there's, we don't eat as much fish now as our ancestors would have. Then what happens is your body holds on to it either in your saliva and can cause oral health disease for people,
Yeah.
or in your breast tissue. And there was this one little word, fibrocystic breast disease.
Yeah.
And I remember when I saw like the top consultant in Scotland for these lumps, and I remember saying to him, well, how do I know? Well, keep checking yourself. I said, well, I can't come back every time I've got a cyst if you're telling me that everybody in Scotland has cysts and I'm going to get more of them. I can't live in fear the whole time. And this one little sentence, I did my own research and found loads of stuff that there's actually a link between if you take a really good dose of kelp, then it prevents a cyst from happening. And when I'm great at taking my supplements, I don't have any of them. And if I'm not good at it, they come back,
Yeah.
So really unintended health things, but for me, it was very much from a health point of view.
Fantastic. Interesting. I take iodine. I take it in cycles. So I would recommend that as well. So fantastic, Joanne. Thanks for sharing that. It's good to see where we're going to end up here. It's really quite exciting. Sacha, the line, tell us your story.
So it's been a lifelong journey for me. It's almost felt, I say to people, it's been like the quest for the Holy Grail. I was looking back, just because I knew I was coming to church, I was looking back over old diaries and things that I'd kept from like years.
Yeah.
And when I look at it, I just think, oh my goodness, how did I manage? I had this fatigue issue from maybe about the age of 15. And along with it, as time went on, I had always been a bit of a bigger girl. So as years went on, I got heavier and heavier. The other issues came up. So I had things like IBS in my 20s, and I was just tired all the time. And I was going back and forth to the doctors. Every sort of few years, I'd go back to the doctors. And they would say, oh, it's the stress, you've just moved house. Oh, you've now got young kids. Oh, that can be quite tired. So every time I went, there was another reason for why I was tired. But to me, it always felt like there was a switch that was switched off, which I now know is insulin in my body. I had far too much insulin, obviously, which created all the other issues. But at one point, when I got into my sort of 30s, the IBS was worse. I had 2 young kids. I started having headaches, night sweats, all the things that you just think, oh, it's because I'm a woman, I'm getting older, whatever. That's what the doctor would say. At one point, just before I had kids, I was diagnosed with depression, because when you actually looked at the list, I ticked all the boxes, apart from the fact I wasn't depressed. Right. But I bought into that. I ended up being off work for a year. Everything was horrendous. And that's round about when I came along to your course and thought, I'm not depressed. I'm a really positive person, a really vibrant, positive person, but there's something in my body that is not working. Couldn't find what it was. By the time I was in my 30s, I went to university when I was 35, and I did this was another quest for the Holy Grail. I did a degree in complementary therapies and reflexology.
Wow, lucky you.
Which was another sort of tool to my kit to help me cope, because I learned a lot of things about Eastern medicine and colours and the different correspondences that link to your health and your energy and your chi, so that helped as well a lot. But I'm still tired, still just so fatigued. And I used to just think, well, maybe this is just how my life is. Maybe this is how I'm meant to be. I've not got terminal illness. I'm not massively ill. I'm just tired. But I can go out, I can cope, I can have a life. But when I look back, the life wasn't really what it should have been. By the time I got to my 40s, it was horrendous. And at that point, I thought, I can't do all the jobs that I'd love to do because I'm too tired. I haven't got the energy. By that point in my 40s, I was working in a college. I loved working in the college with students with additional support needs. And everybody around me was saying, Sasha, you should go into lecturing because you're a natural lecturer. you're a natural people person, and I can't, because the energy you require to do that is huge, and I don't have that energy. Others around me didn't realise that, because I'm a really effervescent person. That's what they saw all the time. They didn't realise the fatigue underneath it. Apart from people who were quite close to me, because sometimes I would be in tears. I would be just like, this is awful. This fatigue is just ruining my life.
Yeah.
At one point, I tried everything. I could go on. We could have a whole 5 hours of me talking about what I did. Some weird, wonderful things. At one point, I was cycling 200 miles a week, because that was my commute to work. Sorry, 100 miles a week. I was 10 miles there, 10 miles back. I was eating everything and logging it in my fitness pal. I had a heart rate monitor, because I'd go back and forth to the doctors, and one doctor actually said to me, well, maybe you're just lying to yourself about what you eat. And I wasn't.
No.
I was logging everything meticulously. I was eating all the good carbs, and well, you know that story, the healthy whole grains.
Yeah.
And then eventually I went to the doctor, put all the printouts on his desk saying, this is how many miles a week I'm doing, there's the evidence, here's my heart rate for what I'm not just cycling along my little basket on the front, I'm really going for it each cycle. Here's everything I've eaten, I'm sticking to all the macros that you're supposed to stick to on a healthy diet.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, right. So we debated it. Long story short, I paid £200 to go and see an endocrinologist.
Wow.
And at that point I was nearly 17 stone, bearing in mind I was cycling 100 miles a week. And he actually said to me, well, for someone your weight, you're in fantastic shape. Keep up the cycling, keep up the healthy diet. And I'm like, but he went, I was like, it's as if you think I'm lying. He said, no, I think just science hasn't got that far. I now know that it had, they just aren't up to date with it.
Yeah.
So eventually, I think I just cried when I left there and was so demotivated. That was around about 2013 when my dad died shortly after, and he was only 71. He had type 2 diabetes, heart disease, like all the, ate really healthy whole grains, etc. Yeah. And it was in 2014, I came to your course. I was on the phone with you speaking about my 14-year-old son, and was it okay to bring him along, because he was quite young, to the island.
Remember that. And
we got onto a conversation, I think, because I was talking about the students I work with. You were telling me about wheat belly and grain brain. Read that, never touched a grain since. And that really led me to, because I was feeling slightly better with the IBS after that, I then found low carb. Just by default, started reading books on low carb, which I could give you a whole list of. Yeah. Then I found keto. Then I also found fasting, and I started doing a lot of fast, long fast, short fast, which really accelerated the healing. And I now know that all of that is to do with insulin and levels of insulin in your body and how. But one of the biggest things for me, having been someone that's always been really big, and my weight still goes up and down if I fall off the wagon a bit, was, and it made me cry, was that we're so, people who are overweight, you feel so guilty about what you eat, and you feel so guilty when you do eat a bit of chocolate that people think, oh, well, no wonder they're so big. That what people don't realise is, because you have, most people who are overweight have high insulin response to carbohydrates. When you have high insulin, it switches on your ghrelin hormone. There's a whole lot of science behind it. But when your ghrelin levels are high as well, you'll constantly be hungry. Yeah. So people will say, for someone who has high ghrelin levels is driven to feed their body, so you feel starving. So to go on these low-fat diets and not eat and feed your body is you've got the most amazing willpower. It's almost the opposite from what people think. And that to me was like, wow, that's huge for me. I know I could go on and on and on about this forever because I'm so passionate about it. But for me, the finding low carb and then keto and fasting, it's completely changed my life, which I'll go on to in a minute, because my life is completely different now. It's just amazing. It's been life transforming. Yeah,
my own journey is to do with my own health. I ended up with a diagnosis that wasn't very nice, and medical professional didn't have a cure, didn't know what caused it, but they'll give you a cure anyway for them, which is put you on prednisone. Very quickly I became a very fat person on stages, and people wondering what's happened to Jack. And not only was I becoming very fat, my mind, I didn't find clarity.
Yeah.
And so I was teaching from a place in a fog. Anyway, and I found my way. But I was in New York working for a company, and I'm in the airport leaving to come back home, and I go looking for a book to read in the plane, and I find Wheat Belly. It just didn't fall off the shelf so much, Rob, but what happened was it was just pulling me in, you know, and I thought, well, tip the tongue trigger, should have your 3 fingers, yeah, you need to buy this. And that led me to Grain Brain, inevitably, and I started telling everyone about them. But the thing is, even though you read these books and you're inspired and you're drawn to them for whatever reason, my search for, I suppose, longevity with a challenging condition, you don't necessarily stick to it all the time. And I'm sure this is common for all of us. You don't stick to it all the time. And I'm still feeling I should tell people about it. And then I turn up at Glasgow to do a course, and Sacha comes out and gifts me Jimmy Moore's book, the Keto book, and Keto Clarity. And she mentioned that she'd reached that from doing Grain Brain and doing Wheat Belly. And I was ever so grateful, and I couldn't put it down when I got it. And that led me to Jimmy Moore. And once you get to Jimmy Moore's podcast, oh my God, it's a university. I remember we drove to the south of France on holiday and back, and I'm sunbathing in the villa and stuff. I just couldn't stop listening to him. And then I found, I think for all of us too, if I can say this for the listener, every single person I know who's involved in this journey, this low carb thing, whether you use the word keto or not, vast majority of people are on it for their health reasons. The weight loss thing may or may not happen, and if it does, it's fantastic benefit, but it's for their health. And what I know, I hear them saying repeatedly, is if something shows up that's better than keto or low carb, we'll all go there. And that's the important thing. We're not tied to like some sort of religion. We've not got the same sort of ethos maybe as sometimes the vegans have. So it's not we're not in a, it's not almost like a religion. It's not like that at all. It's fact, if Jimmy Moore stands up and said, actually, I'm no longer doing it, I'm doing this for this reason, and all the other professors and all the other leaders in this movement, we'd all just cycle over there. But anyway, one of the things that has always inspired me about, in this journey, and again, I'm ever so grateful for Sacha for tipping me off in this direction, is the benefits that I've got from it. Getting rid of immediately the hunger thing that you talk about, Sacha, for me, because I was occasionally I'd still be eating high carby veggies, can still convince myself they were okay, because I hadn't got the low carb, high fat thing. I had the thing about the Wheat Belly, and I had the thing about the Grain Brain, and I would do the best I could, but I didn't really get it. I didn't understand the fat thing at all. As soon as I started doing the high fat thing, the low carb, the keto thing, the clarity in my brain was unbelievable. I'd lost all the hunger. So I had endless benefits. So guys, fairly briefly, because there's a lot we want to cover, could you, each of you, just share some of the benefits that you've personally got out of this, your own journey? And that might inspire the people to venture in. We'll talk about venturing in later. So Rob, do you want to just quickly share with us some of the benefits you found?
Yeah, some of the benefits you've already mentioned. Weight loss, it's just a side effect. Because the metabolic syndrome is usually inflammatory. Yeah. I've had hay fever all my life. 2 years ago, hay fever stopped. Yeah. Yeah, I've sneezed a couple of times today because it's really hot and it's really high. But this time I would have been streaming. I would have probably had a day off work. Yeah. Because of the, even dust or anything like that. I mentioned creaking of joints. I mentioned how clear my mind gets for business, for family. The benefits of eating good food around the table with your family, rather than a ping meal, stick a processed food in a microwave, which we used to be doing, watching TV, instead of, communicating, that was one of the thing. Another thing, I don't beat myself up, and neither should anybody when you fall off the wagon. You can go straight back into it. Yeah. And there are vegans, there are vegetarians. You always mention, Jack, Will Cole's book, Ketotarian. Yeah. Great, just the go-to place. It's just make sure that you get the right stuff that you don't get in meat and other proteins, and that's fine. But benefits is just feeling happy and not being too. I must admit, first 6 months, Jack, I was what's he called, the Billy Graham of the low carb universe. That I've toned it down a little bit now, but it's just I was so enthusiastic. I wanted to tell everybody, but the fact that you do get enthusiastic, you get inspired. Our business, although in these troubled times, we found out new ways, streams of income, all that type of thing, and it just teamed up with the old school MindStore. It only works, Jack.
Yeah, perfect blend. Patrick, what about benefits you've found?
I think the obvious one, Jack, is the fact that I was able to come through the surgery so quickly, and because I was metabolically healthy, and the fact, right, that 4 weeks after major open heart surgery, I was walking 5 or 6K. I think that proved it to me. I'm a bit like Rob. I'm feeling much better physically and mentally. There's no sign of the achy joints and all that used to be there. And you accept it as reluctantly as a part of getting old. When you get out of bed in the morning and it's pains when you stand up and things, and they go away after a while. They're not there anymore, right? The mental clarity is so much better. I did find that at the start when I went to low carb, I gave up all the breads and the pastas and all that, but I was still eating dairy and cheese and things. Yeah. And I still had some of the stomach issues. And after doing a consultation with Paleo Medicina, they recommended that I do paleo carnivore for 3 to 6 months. And yes, I do have the breakout for the birthday cake and all that, right? But like Rob says, just get back on the horse again straight away. And what I've noticed now, right, is that the gut issues aren't there anymore. The hay fever, which it's uncanny. I'd be the same, had it every year and all that, and haven't had any of it at all this year. So that it's, and of course the weight, which I didn't do it for a weight issue, but I'm at my lightest weight now than I've been since probably my late teens or early 20s.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
So and like you said, if something better comes along, right, that all these guys are doing and that there's evidence for it, why wouldn't you go there? Of course.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But I haven't found anything better that worked for me, and I'm very optimistic.
Yeah.
Because as you listen to these, these guys are developing the science that little bit, and they're tweaking it and all that as well. And it's fantastic to hear that. And every week there's something new to get excited about.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Patrick mentioned there metabolic health. One of the things you hear constantly if you're on the podcast or you're watching it on YouTube or you're reading blogs and stuff is that apparently 83% of North Americans, in the United States, Canadians forgive me, but certainly in the United States, 83% of the adults are metabolically unhealthy. And that's a phenomenal statistic. And then when you look at the over 60s, it's 94%. A very, very incredibly unhealthy nation. And yet, that's massive. So those of us here on this journey, part of the reason I think I'm on it is to be metabolically healthy. And as best I know, I am. I still to get my CAC scan. I'm going to get it in due course and see where that leads me. But other than that, I'm very happy. So Joanne, one of the things we hear, I know you know I was saying this for the right reason, is as a man in the keto world, you often hear women having slightly more interesting journeys with it than, say, could be not always, but relatively easier for men. But there's some things about when I remember you and I having a chat about stuff, and you put me onto a lot of stuff I hadn't considered around supplementation. Do you want to share a wee bit about the benefits you've had? Then we'll come into maybe the challenge you have in the next cycle. But what about the benefits that you've noticed?
Yeah, for me, so obviously things like the bloating and the acid reflux, all that had went. Yeah. Migraines went down like drastically. I think a big thing for me was more energy and more stamina. And a couple of years ago, you and I did a podcast together. And where it got me to was setting myself a really crazy goal to do a mini triathlon. And I wasn't a very strong swimmer. I live in a cul-de-sac and I couldn't run to the end of the road without being breathless. And I hadn't been on a bike for years. And I went to one of my friends who's a personal trainer, can you help me out with this? And everything that I was reading, so by that point I was already doing wheat belly, low carb, high fat, and everything that I was reading about how to train for that was pump yourself up with glucose and take these shots and so on. And I thought, I am not going to do that. I'm going to find another way to do this. And I'm really proud to say that I was able to do it with little sachets of coconut oil and one small block of cheese. So for anybody out there, like, I couldn't have ever imagined myself doing something like that. And also, even before I started training for that, as soon as I started the wheat belly, weight just fell off instantly when I was eating whatever I wanted in the low carb, high fat lifestyle, which was completely the opposite of everything that I'd ever been taught. Just as Rob said earlier about, all of the different diets that you do and low fat, they're full of wheat, and they're also addictive, right? When you read William Davies' stuff, he talks about how effectively these things are like opioids. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting as I'm watching this. There's 5 screens, and you're sitting, Joanne, right beside Patrick. So I keep saying it's a wide church, and we're all individual. How we get into it and how we find our niche. And Patrick, moved away from the cheese, and yet you're using cheese. So it's such a beautiful thing, this, that you can find your level to suit yourself, as long as you're honest with yourself and you're learning from your body. So that again, just I find it fascinating. We all can be individual within it, uniquely, like your thumbprint, how we approach this. And you can do it as a vegan, pescatarian, and all the rest of it. And ultimately experiment, if you can, with the full meat only or carnivore, which I've had great fun with myself. But so Satya, what about your benefits? I keep looking at that line, by the way, that line, and presumably a male line.
I think so, yeah. With
a male line for the women. Interesting. But anyway, on you go. Please tell us.
It's been life-changing, like I said earlier. And it was the search for the Holy Grail, which I found, which is unbelievable. So for me, the changes have been health-wise. I lost over about 4.5, 5 stone, which was great. I've put a little bit back on just for various reasons. Yeah. But the fatigue is gone. Sleep is absolutely amazing. I used to have to go to a sleep clinic because my sleep was so bad. Yeah. Around 2013, 12, I was going to a sleep clinic. Sleep's amazing. I don't have IBS anymore. Yeah. I used to also get a lot of heartburn. I don't have that anymore. The clarity of thought, like you've spoke about, is incredible. And because of that, in 2015, I thought, I am going to go and get a job in lecturing in the college I worked in. So I went to university to do a postgraduate in teaching and further education. And I did that on top of my job. Wow. I also did some lecturing hours on top of my job. And then in 2017, I got a full-time lecturing job. I could never have done that before, because the energy you need to do it, the planning, I mean, you can imagine in teaching. Yeah. And I wake up every morning, and it was quite interesting because when I first started waking up in the morning naturally, say at the weekend and not having to get up for work about 7:30, I would lie there and think, oh, oh, right, I'll go to the loo, go back to bed, try and go back, because I spent my whole life craving sleep, craving that sleep I felt like I never had. And it almost felt like I had a hangover in the morning, even if I hadn't had a drink. So I'd wake up in the morning and I'd think, oh, right, I'm not tired. What do I do? What do you do at 7:30 on a Saturday morning?
Yes.
It was totally alien, and it actually psychologically, it took about a month for me to adjust to that. And even now, which is years later, I'll still be, I work further away, so I don't cycle to work now. I'll drive to work and I feel excited in the morning because I'm awake. It's the most amazing feeling to have energy. And I used to think, is this what normal people feel like? It's like a whole new world. The world looks different. The colours are different, because instead of, instead of just being consumed by this tiredness and when am I going to get asleep and how am I going to get through my day, it's like this world that's out there that I didn't recognise before. So for me, it's allowing me at the age of 51 now to fulfil my potential, to be this person that I always was inside.
Yeah. And
it's about I don't have to accept that anymore, how I was, because it's gone. It's amazing. I mean, there's been lots of other, I think, Rob, you mentioned about gallbladders.
Yes.
I've got gallstones, and I used to have horrific gallbladder attacks. And in 2014, I think it was, 15, I was supposed to get my gallbladder out. And that was round about when I'd found low carb and keto. And I ended up, when the operation actually came, a couple of days before, I cancelled it because I hadn't had any problems.
Wow. So
I cancelled my gallbladder operation. Occasionally I'll get a flare up because there's certain things that will trigger it. So that's been another thing. I don't have aches and pains. I don't have headaches. I was diagnosed at one point with exercise-induced asthma.
Wow.
Don't have that anymore. I mean, it's just incredible.
Endless.
It's endless benefits. I mean, the weight goes on and off depending what I've been eating or drinking alcohol-wise. But for me, it was never, the weight's been a great bonus. But for me, it's always been about the health and the fatigue, and it's just like the switch has been flicked, and I don't have it anymore.
Fantastic. I mean, I think that if you're watching this, if you can imagine, we were on a course together, and I got a big flip chart, and we said, okay, let's brainstorm between the five of us the benefits. We would fill the pages. It's not just one thing, folks. It's all these other wonderful benefits. So, you said something there really, really amazing. Just to reflect back, is this how real people feel? This is how ordinary people feel. Well, actually, it's the opposite. Ordinary people feel all the stuff we feel or felt before we got into this.
Yeah.
That's what ordinary people are feeling. They haven't. This is what I find. That's why I'm every Saturday over those years, I was like, guys, going to listen to me, because you don't know what it's like to not have brain fog. You don't know what it's like to not be hungry. It's once we've experienced it, we go, wow.
Yeah.
If only their loved ones and their friends and their colleagues could all come on board. And they can come on board easily. But having said that, there are challenges because there's ups and downs with it. And occasionally we blow out a wee bit. I blew out the other day. I just had an extra gin and tonic sort of thing. I had a bit of, I was out walking. We make our own keto cakes sort of thing, just so we got a cake and a cup of tea somewhere on a walk. But I had 2 bits of the cake, and I had something else. And before I knew what it was, I'd overloaded some of my carbs. And a day later, inflammation. Just geez, and just like how easy it is for it to switch back into those old models. But anyway, so guys, again, just fairly briefly, because we've still got quite a lot to cover and we're motoring on. Talk about some of the challenges you maybe had with it. Just so that people know it's real. It's a real life thing. And sometimes you let yourself go and then things happen. Anything you can share with the folks to help them realise we're not some sort of models of ideal health. We're human.
Yeah, can I go first, Jack?
Yeah, please, Rob. Just go in a circle. Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, sure. One of the challenge which I think that people do get when they sort of go cold turkey off carbs is what's called keto flu.
Oh yeah.
And luckily, but reading the books before I embarked on the journey, it's just basically I'm lacking natural salts and magnesium in the body. And you can just pick those up from your local health food or order them online. The other challenge that I had relates to the gallbladder. Now, I'm going to be quite graphic here. If I do have too much fat, I could be called what the bulletproof guy, Dave Asprey, says, disaster pants.
Yes.
Read into that whatever you may, because sometimes if you're taking with me, my gallbladder is not there to process fat into the pancreas. So therefore there's some sort of reaction that goes on. It's normally, if I'm probably have you can Google this, bulletproof coffee. I do have that, butter and coffee with some oil. But if I don't have something fatty after it, or perhaps on a empty stomach, sometimes things can go wrong. But I've only experienced that in about 3 or 4 times. The other challenges which I've got over, love eating out when we can, but picking the right things at the restaurant, and you just get attuned to it. And the other thing is that may to put people off is reading too much into it. Too much about the science. What I say is you can listen to the science, listen to us, listen to you, Jack, listen to the podcast, listen to your body, how that reacts. I know if I've had some carbs or something that doesn't disagree with me, I get a little bit of psoriasis on my hands. I learned that I can't process red wine, which I love, if it's got sulfates in it. So you get to learn. So those are the types of challenges. But once you know what you can pick off a menu, do your homework perhaps before you go out or choose the restaurant. And you can have a drink. I just don't drink beer anymore. Unless I'm in Ireland, I do have a Guinness now and then. But I do like wine and I like spirits. So, but again, you can get back into this thing that happens in your body within a couple of days anyway.
Yeah, good man, Rob. Patrick, any experiences of challenges with it?
Yeah, I think I had the keto flu at the start, because I did go cold turkey on the bread and all the pastas and the sugar. And I mean, I've had a sugar addiction with years and years, and it's still very, very strong. And even when you have the birthday cake or whatever it is, you find that it's a major battle to actually get back on the horse and all that again. What I've done recently is I bought a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, and I found it to be very good, because I think I still have the leaky gut symptoms, and I think it takes probably 3 to 6 months before they repair properly, because you need to give them a chance to do that. And obviously the stint in hospital and hospital food just brought me back to square one again. But it's fascinating actually when you're monitoring your glucose all the time, because normally I would just take it in the morning, and you can see stuff that even that's on, we'll say, a keto diet or on, and you have different reactions to it. And I mean, what amazed me, right, is that I couldn't believe, and not that I eat it anymore, but I just tried it recently, porridge. And I mean, porridge is out there as a superfood, and I mean, it caused a sugar spike for hours and hours. So I'm finding now, right, that by going with that and listening to your body a little bit and seeing what's spiking and all that, that I'm finding out what works for me. And I suppose I have to say, right, that going carnivore on its own, until you get a cookbook and everything, it can be a little bit boring probably, or to be honest, right, it's grand. You get sick of the steak every day, right, or the liver and onions and stuff, right? So that I think that is a challenge, that you come off from satiety and all that, and I agree with you, that when you start applying the fat in the proper, like I think it's 30% fat that I use in the thing now, and that gets rid of the hunger very quickly. But I think it's just educating yourself to what works for you and all that. And if you do nothing else to start, other than get rid of the big three, the vegetables and the seed oils, the refined carbs and the sugars, if you do nothing else there, I think you've made a major, major start in helping your health. And I think afterwards, rather than have to deprive yourself and look at it as another diet, right, or another deprivation that you have to give yourself, right? Just do that and maybe take it in stages and just move it on to another level. But like all the people that have been said there, listen to your body, what it's telling you and all that. And don't be one of, you know, the vast majority out there that we've been indoctrinated in the fact that this is the way we've lived all our lives. And it's amazing to come out of the clouds and see what life is like. And even at 60 and you're a bit angry, why didn't I find this when I was in my 20s? I didn't, you know, but I am where I am now, and it's fantastic. And again, look, thanks to you for bringing it out there and helping, certainly help me and all that, but helping other people that hopefully can discover this for themselves as well.
Cheers, Patrick. Appreciate you saying that. Joanne, ups and downs?
Yeah, for me, I think it's, you've really got to be quite organised. You know, so you've got to do your research, you've got to read all the labels, you've kind of got to menu plan, and if that was what I found worked for me, and making sure that you've actually got the shopping in, that you do some meal prep, because you know a lot of things you're cooking from scratch, you're not picking up pre-made jars or processed foods and so on, so that takes quite a bit of time, and you know, if you're serious about it, you've really got to make that time. For me personally, for the last kind of 6 months, I've been off the wagon, because when Jack asked me to chat about this, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm your woman today, you know, ask Sasha. And I've already got Sasha, I want you to. And he said, look, I want you to come and talk about your challenges as well, because they're real, right? So for about the last 6 months, it's been quite interesting you asking me to do this, because it's made me really reflect over the last couple of days, Jack, so thank you. You know, right, how have you got to where you are? And I've realised that, you know, I was going through redundancy in my job, trying to find another one, coronavirus and all of that in the middle of it, trying to find, you know, another role, a lot going on, kind of family things, and at the same time we were building a house with a cowboy builder.
Wow.
And when I look back, I think, right, no wonder you didn't have any time on your hands. You know, you're kind of in survival mode, and you're just getting through. So more takeaways being ordered, and before you know it, you're starting to eat the things that you never would have eaten before, and then you kind of gradually readjust yourself, that you get used to the fact that you've got acid reflux again or whatever else. And I'm definitely at the stage now, and having really gone back and thought about all the benefits that I had before, you're thinking, gosh, how did you get there, you know? But if I add on to that about some of the extra research I've been doing, but I've been doing reading, I just now need to take action. It's the way that you talk about MindStore, right? It's a doing thing, it's not a knowing thing. So you talked earlier about metabolic. So I've come across a guy called Dr. Jay Tata. So he's an American. I think he's a GP, and then he's got really into kind of the physical side and metabolic. And he's written some stuff around metabolic renewal. And what I really like about what he takes into account is men can use it as well, but he looks at hormone levels in women and what stage in your life are you at. So I'm 47, I'm at pre-menopause stage. But the thing that's really hit home about the reading that I'm doing with him is that if you're under high stress or high pressure, then this stuff won't work for you. You have to deal with that. So it's, you know, not exercising to the point where you put your body under more pressure. So it's all about, you know, how are you, when you're under pressure, you get more adrenaline, you get more cortisol, which is causing your insulin to go all over the place. And if I look back the last 6 months, it's about me being kind of mentally healthy. And sometimes then you've not got room for anything else. But what it's made me realise is that whilst I was setting goals through the last 6 months, I didn't use the wheel of life. So the bit that I've been completely missing is completely out of balance. So my wheel's kind of going like this, it's higgledy-piggledy. And when you look at health, you need to look at everything holistically. So definitely this has been a kick up the backside for me. because I know that it's when I just feel absolutely amazing. So why on earth wouldn't you? You know. And now I'm in furlough now. We've had a couple of weeks of just chilling out. We've just kind of hibernated for the last couple of weeks. My husband's back at work now, so I can get a bit of structure while I'm still in furlough. So definitely this is the next goal that I'm setting and using MindStore to help me achieve it.
Excellent. I mean, I think, look, we're all human, and I think what everybody should be hearing, back to basic MindStore for a moment, managing stress, massive issue. It's not going away. It's always going to be there. And it has a huge impact on metabolic health. So again, Joanne, thanks for sharing that. Just since you've mentioned, I think for me, what I knew I had to do to get into this was to realize where I might fall off. You know, and I, for example, once I understood I could, for example, make my own, you know, Lorne sausage or square slice, being a Glaswegian, and having it on a roll. Being able to make my own keto rolls and have my own square slice, what a difference that made to me. So and then Rob knows, him and I were back and forward with how to make sausage rolls, how to make pizzas, so they were completely ketogenic. And they'd quickly put, just put something together in 4 or 5 minutes, give yourself a piece of bread if you needed bread. And then what happens is you do that for a few weeks, and then you realize, actually, I don't need that any longer. And then occasionally you'll have a keto pizza, and occasionally I might have a rolling sausage again, and then I occasionally have a keto cake, and we're into that, bit of fun for that. But
I think you're right. I think it's about keeping it really simple. You talked about longevity earlier, and I'm really lucky. So I also have an Irish nana, Patrick, and she lived till she was 96. Died about 5 years ago. And if I think about it, this is eating like my Irish nana without potatoes. So it's it's meat and 2 veg, eat the fat on your meat, butter, cream, all of the things that were kind of homegrown on the farm. Just lose the potatoes as a way to keep this really, really simple. Don't have the gravies and stuff like that.
Yeah, fantastic. Satya, what about you? What's the ups and downs?
I would say really what everyone else has said. One of the things for me with the salt is I notice if I've not had enough salt, I start to feel really tired. I start to feel quite tired, and I think, and at work people sort of look and think, what are you doing? Because I've got my little tub of salt and I take my pink Himalayan salt, and within 10-15 minutes you feel much better again. I think similar to what Joanna was saying, hormonally for me, certain times it can almost be like the perfect storm that gets me off track. So if hormonally I'm at a certain stage and I've got something that's maybe a bit stressful, or I've not slept as well, that then triggers cravings for me. And I've realised I'd posted, I'm part of the Glasgow MindStore group, and I'd posted on that a few weeks ago some videos from the 2020 Public Health Collaboration Conference. And two of the speakers on that were talking about sugar addiction, and that to me was really, really interesting, because I knew I had a sort of sugar carb thing. So I'm going to read up a bit more about that, because for me that's definitely one of the issues. Is I've obviously got a sugar addiction, so one of the things that I find really difficult to overcome when I go off track is the craving for sugar. So I'll eat things like chocolate, I'll have more alcohol, but that then just creates a downward spiral. However, one of the things I noticed recently, a few months ago when I went a bit off track, was being off track was nothing like what I used to eat before. Like absolutely nothing. So yeah, it's off track, but it's not. My meals were still keto, but the only thing was I was drinking more alcohol, and I was having bits of chocolate and maybe oat cakes, pretending they were healthy to myself. Just porridge. You said porridge. I had porridge as well, and thinking, but that's healthy, even though I knew it wasn't. The little voice is like, yeah, that's healthy. I think, like everybody else has said, you really need to be organised, because if you're not, when you get stressed, you go to the shops and all you can see is carbs. It's really difficult to shop if you're not organised. And then that's when it's easy to just not properly look at labels, and then you take things and you don't realise it's got sort of carbs in it. That then sets you down a bit of a carb craving route because you've inadvertently taken them.
Yep.
So it is really about getting a lot of knowledge. If you're not into reading books, listen to the podcast like you say quite a lot. In the beginning, I used to listen every day going to work, the Keto Talk and Fasting Talk. They were my two sort of main ones.
Yep.
There are a few out there for women as well. I've not found much of a difference, I don't think, being a woman, apart from maybe, the hormones at certain times of the month give me some cravings.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really about reading or listening to as much as you can, informing yourself about it, because it's only that way that you can really get over this fat is good for you, and actually understand why it's good for you, and listen to the science behind it. And some of them, they talk about it in really simple terms, and it does make you have a bit of a, oh my goodness moment. And you do think, wow, what? There's a guy called Dr. Ken Berry. I don't know if you've followed him.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And Lies, my doctor told me that was a really good book. That was really interesting. Yeah. And when I went to the low carb conference in 2017, I felt like a groupie because I met Dr. Fung and I met Andreas Einfeld, the diet doctor. So it was a total geek fest for me. There was a group of doctors sitting beside me. There was about 6 of them. There was a lot of doctors at that conference, and they were actually quite angry. And I remember at the break, one of them saying to me, I can't believe that we don't get taught this, because it makes so much sense. The science makes so much sense.
Yeah. Why
are we being fed these other lies, really?
Yeah.
And he couldn't quite believe it. But I would recommend looking at all the public health collaboration videos. There's a lot of good videos on there, and it's doctors. It's not just randoms that are into ketogenic or low carb eating. There's some good videos by some really sort of renowned doctors like Asim Malhotra and others. Yeah. So inform yourself as much as you can, because it's only then I think that you're really going to understand it and then know what you're doing and why you're doing it.
I think the thing that inspired me getting into, and it's all your fault because you gave me that book, but the thing is, it was to find endless professors, endless doctors, endless specialists across every field you can think of saying this is the way to go, this is safe, fat's good for you, and all the stuff I've mentioned. But what isn't good for you is seed oils. And that's the other thing about reading. You know, I go in, because I really worry about vegans, to be frank. I can't help it, because I used to do all that and it made me ill. And so what I did was I look at the vegan products in Waitrose, for example, and I look at, and they're full of really challenging ingredients. If they're eating vegan with real good food, proper food, cooked from scratch, fantastic. But if you're buying packaged stuff, oh my God, particularly the oils, very dangerous. But you need to educate yourself on that. But anyway, just quickly, we haven't said this, but for everybody who has been watching, Rob himself is a podcaster, and he runs an amazing podcast called Keto Happiness. And he's, we didn't want to push it on you. I know he didn't, but you need to go and dig that, because he's got some of the greats on there, and he's asking from a MindStore point of view, and he's also asking it from a Brit point of view, because very often the podcasts are Americans or Australians or something. They're wonderful, of course, but to get a Brit asking questions is cool. But anyway, just to kind of round up, I kind of aim to do this for 90 minutes. Hopefully the guys have gone on from the usual hour. Just a few minutes each on given why I get into this bunch of videos. It's what are you doing about COVID? What's your own personal strategy? And just keep it tight, because we only got a few minutes. But I want everybody to hear what everybody's doing or not doing, because maybe you're just letting it happen, or maybe you've figured out something, or you've listened to podcasts and you've got confidence in some way. Anything you'd like to share, guys? Rob?
Initially, I'm obviously doing the self-isolation, social distancing, because a bit like Scotland and Ireland, we've got totally different rules to England. So I've been doing that from the some of the COVID Facebook casts. Started to take vitamin K2, up in my vitamin D. All the inflammatory food is written anyway, because that's the way I eat anyway. And getting out and getting vitamin D. Doing my daily walk in the morning with my wife just clears my head, and doing MindStore And I also do a little bit of yoga, and I do a little bit of other meditation as well. So that's my sort of go-to.
Good man. Good man. Patrick, any thoughts on it, given that, you know, one would imagine you're in the risky character of just having had heart operation?
Yeah, and I suppose when I came back, Jack, yeah, I've been isolated, we'll say, for the past 2 or 3 months. I had a consultation with the cardiologist, I think last week or the week before, so he reckons that my risk is the same as anybody else for my age. And I think over the last couple of weeks, I've taken the view that at some stage or other, we're all going to have to get exposed to it. That there is no, you cannot lock yourself away forever, right? And I think that, and I think that maybe the decisions that were made at the time, it was based on a lot of fear, and there's still, all the media is still driving it from a fear. We don't get to hear any of the positive stories and all that. And I think the decisions were taken for the right reasons and all that. I'd be concerned that it'll be used for more nefarious reasons, like global vaccine agendas, and that isn't what today is about and all that, right?
No.
And maybe promoting a cashless society and all that. I think on a personal basis, right? And I've said it, you know, laughingly to my family and all that, I would happily go into a nursing home and take residence there to give myself the virus rather than be forced a vaccine and all that. Now, that isn't to try and be controversial or anything. I just think, I feel, right, that, and I'm not being arrogant about it, I think metabolically, and we're coming back to that word again, right? I feel I'm in relatively good shape. And I think, I hope that if I do come across the virus and all that, that I'll be able to fight it off easily enough. So on a personal basis, I'm not too concerned about it. I'm observing the social distancing and all that, but I think that I can't wait for life to get back to a little bit more normality and all that. And I think that we look back at this and history, and I think it'll show that there was a lot of hysteria. Like I said at the start, I think for all the right reasons, you know, to protect people but I think if a fraction of the resource was put into protecting the genuinely vulnerable, the elderly, and maybe, you know, those metabolically challenged and all that we could have had maybe different outcomes and all that. But I think it is where we are. But I genuinely think, even from listening to the podcast and all the guys that are doing the data, that what's happening is that it's a very strong virus, natural or man-made, it doesn't matter which it is, right? And I think it's going through the cycle that viruses do, that eventually that they will peter out and all that. You might have a bit of a spike and all that, but I think that it isn't as much to fear as probably, you know, that we're being led to do. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Joanne, what have you been doing with it?
So for me, just really simple. So bell jar technique for the news, but, you know, kind of being quite selective about what I'm listening to, kind of doing the same with everything that's going on in America right now as well. You know, to keep yourself informed, but protect yourself at the same time, and what's coming towards you. If I go out, I wear a bell jar when I go out. You know, that I think that kind of helps. And then just kind of, I've tried to take an approach of, I've watched everybody else, I think because I was late going on to furlough, so I've only been in furlough for a few weeks. I watched everyone at the beginning, you know, I'm going to set myself goals, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I was starting to recognise, you know, this, you know, dealing with pressure and so on. And I just thought, I am going to do the opposite of all of that. I'm just going to be really kind to myself. I'm going to look after me. I'm going to look after my kids. It's oxygen mask time. So I've really just tried to slow the pace down. Get out in the sun as much as I can. Do really simple things like painting the fence, or, you know, but it will take me as long as it takes me, because it's I'll do it when I want to do it. So I'm in a place of not forcing anything at the moment. Spending time kind of MindStore techniques, and also listening a lot to Abraham Hicks. I've got I find that app really great, the Vortex app. You know, and just chilling out for 15 minutes. And what I love about that, it reminds me of when you used to play, when you used to get us to breathe, that it sounded like a wave. So there's music in it that gets you to breathe in and breathe out, and then the science behind it is you're breathing in for a shorter amount of time than you're breathing out, so you're controlling the vagus nerve, and for me, just the mind-body connection with all of that, and obviously there's lots of research coming out now about the vagus nerve, then that's a great app for helping you just do that, and then subliminally you're hearing what's being said as well.
Well done. Sasha, what's your thing about COVID? What are you doing?
I would say very similar to Joanne. I'm really just using it as a time for me, because we'll never get this time again. My kids are older, they're 19 and 21, so they sort of do their own thing. My husband sort of is doing his own thing, which involves a lot of watching Netflix. I've not watched a single Netflix, I can say. I've been spending as much time as I can outdoors. I'm working from home, which is a bit difficult for the students I have. So instead of giving myself a hard time for thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not doing as much work as I should, if it's a nice day, I go out and spend as much time out in the sun as I can. I'm so lucky. I live in Hopetoun Estate, which is just outside South Queensferry, and it's like a parallel universe. It's absolutely beautiful. Trees, birds singing. So I spend as much time as I can outside. I go a walk around the estate every day, and there's deer and sheep and lambs, and I just take it all in, the nature, the colours, which is really uplifting. Don't really look at the news. I sort of scan the headlines, read a bit of it, don't really pay much attention because I think a lot of it is scaremongering anyway. I've been watching a lot of podcasts. I'm in the middle of doing 4 weekends of a mindfulness course. It was supposed to be at Sam Yi Ling, the Buddhist temple. But the last weekend we had to do it online at home. So I've been doing my meditation every night for that, and then I do my programming, my MindStore programming every morning, program my day. And I've been doing a bit of yoga in the afternoon. I've just been really using the time to do all the things that I don't quite have enough time for usually to fit in every single day. So for me, it's been a really lovely experience the last few months. I feel a bit guilty for that in a way, but we're never going to get that time.
Funny that we feel guilty about it. It's interesting, isn't it? Just loving it and taking care of ourselves.
The other thing I have been doing, and this came from your chat a few weeks ago. It wasn't Lothar. What was the other guy's name? Klaus Bertel, Yes. I've been having cold showers.
Same here. Lovely.
Every morning. I started off with the hot, and then the last maybe I'd do 5 up to maybe 2 or 3 minutes of cold. Whereas now I just don't even put the hot on. I go in and just do the straight cold, wash my hair, whatever.
You're way ahead of me. That's amazing.
So and today I washed it, conditioned it. I was in there for a good maybe 7 or 8 minutes, and it's bizarre. It doesn't feel cold anymore. So fantastic. I've been doing that. So just things to vitamin D. I think Rob had said that vitamin D with K2. But I think the way we eat as well, it's your immune system's going to be a lot better than other people.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you did put the time in, I put into listening or watching or reading about it, and I gift myself that to learn. It's like a university, is if you're metabolically healthy and everything you can to be so, chances are your immune system will fight it off. And if, and I think, Patrick, the way I read it too is you've either already been exposed to it or you will. And if you don't get the 19, you'll get the 20 version or 21, 22. Because they just keep coming. And the main thing, of course, is to ensure, it's up to you as best you can. Do you look after yourself? Do you take the hints? Do you follow the coincidences that, if I put something up on Facebook and you read it, you've got to ask yourself why you're reading it, because you might not have read it. You might have not bothered. And if I'm saying something, it's because I opened my mind up to something coming to me. I'm passing on to you the best intentions. You've got to listen to why you're hearing something like that, why you're being pushed to look or whatever, because you came to hear it, you came to read it, you came to listen to it, you came to watch this. I would urge you to, every one of you, to explore the journey and if need be, get out your comfort zone, because somebody needs you, somebody loves you. You're still here for a reason. There's something you're offering and adding to people's lives. And you'll do it better, I think, if you're doing that from a place of maximum health. But anyway, as best you can with the resources you've got. Guys, I can only thank you. I'm sure everybody's going to love this one. I've been inspired by it. I'm sure everyone else says. I can't thank you enough for giving up an hour and a half of your time instead of walking through the forest there, Sasha, or oming out, or whatever you're doing, Joanne. Fantastic. Guys, thank you. Wonderful. Catch you again sometime soon, eh?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.